Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are really thrilled to have you with us today for another exploration into the hidden layers of our daily lives.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
And actually, for this specific deep dive, I want to extend a really special welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast listeners who might be tuning in right now.
Oh, absolutely.
We are diving into a topic today that sits just, well, right at the heart of that world.
It really does. And you're right, this topic fits perfectly with that network because we're looking at an object that is ubiquitous in the funeral industry.
Ubiquitous but invisible.
Exactly. It's completely invisible to the rest of us until the very moment we actually need it.
Right. We are talking about something you have almost certainly held in your own hands. You might even have one tucked away in a desk drawer right now.
Or pressed inside a family Bible.
Yes. Or maybe stuck to a refrigerator with a magnet. We are talking about the funeral brochure.
It's such a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, if you just look at the words, it sounds like we're going to spend the next hour talking about stationery.
Right, like paperweights and...
Paper stocks, folding techniques. And to be fair, we are going to get into those things.
We have to.
We do. But as we dug into the source material for this, it became obvious very quickly that we aren't just talking about paper.
Yeah.
We are talking about psychology. We are talking about the actual architecture of grief.
And that was the biggest surprise for me, honestly. Because I tend to think of a program or a brochure as just a checklist.
The logistical thing.
Right. You know, first we do this, then we do that. It's purely functional.
Yeah.
The sources frame it as this profound psychological tool.
It is doing some major, heavy, emotional lifting during a time of absolute crisis.
So that's the core mission of our deep dive today. We need to unpack how a simple piece of folded paper manages to act as a historical record.
And a tool for anxiety reduction.
Right. And a vessel for mourning, all at the exact same time.
And the source material leads with this really compelling hook for you all listening. In a world that has gone completely digital, I mean, where we have QR codes for menus at restaurants and evites for weddings.
Right.
Why does this physical piece of paper still matter so much?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Because I really can't imagine walking into a memorial service and seeing a sign that just says, scan here for the order of service.
It would feel completely wrong, wouldn't it?
It would feel so cold.
Exactly. The research suggests that the persistence of this physical object is really about permanence.
Permanence.
Yeah, it's about tactile comfort. It is about the human need to just hold on to a memory when everything else around you feels like it is slipping away.
Wow.
But before we get into the why of all that, let's establish the what.
Right, let's define our terms for everyone. The source material mostly calls it a funeral brochure, but honestly that feels a little corporate to me.
It does a bit, and it goes by a lot of different names.
Yeah, what else is it called?
Well, depending on your region or your religious tradition, or honestly just what your family prefers, you might hear it called a memorial program.
Okay.
You might hear it called an order of service. In some circles, it's a funeral bulletin.
But we're defining it as that printed document, usually folded, that is handed out at the entrance of a memorial service.
It's the thing the usher hands you when you walk in.
Or the thing you pick up from that little basket by the door.
Exactly. And the source highlights that this object has a really fascinating dual function. It essentially has to serve two masters.
And those two masters seem totally contradictory to me.
They really are. So on one hand, you have the logistical guide. This is the purely functional side of the paper.
The checklist.
Right. It tells people what to do. Stand here. Sit there.
Sing this song.
Listen to this person. It is literally an instruction manual for the next hour of your life.
Right. It's almost like the safety card in the seat pocket of an airplane.
That is a really good analogy.
Yeah.
But then you have this second function, which is the keepsake.
The permanent tribute.
Yes. It is designed to be taken home, cherished, and preserved for decades.
And that's exactly where the contradiction lies, you know? Because you don't frame the safety card from the airplane.
No, you definitely don't.
You don't keep the instruction manual for your toaster in a scrapbook. Usually, logistical documents are just trashed the very moment the event is over.
You toss them on the way out the door.
But this is different.
This ends up in the family archive.
Yeah.
And that tension, that specific tension between being a disposable guide for the moment and a permanent record for history, that is what dictates the entire design and the psychology of the brochure.
So let's dive deep into that psychology. The source material uses a phrase that I absolutely loved for this. It called it order in the storm.
Order in the storm. It's such a poetic way to describe what is actually a neurological reality.
How so?
Well, the experts in the source material explain that grief does really strange things to the brain.
Yeah,
It causes this sort of cognitive fog.
just a total blur.
Exactly. Concentration becomes incredibly difficult. Decision-making slows way down.
You just feel off, like you're not fully there.
You do. And when you combine that internal fog with the totally unfamiliar external environment of a funeral,
You get anxiety.
massive anxiety. Guests often feel very awkward. They are unsure of the protocol.
Right, they're thinking, do I know the words to this hymn?
Or how long is the sermon going to be?
Is there a reception afterwards, or do I just go straight home?
I have absolutely felt that.
You're sitting there trying to be respectful, trying to be present for the family, but in the back of your mind, you're just worried about making a mistake.
You don't want to be the one person standing when everyone else sits down.
Exactly. That inner monologue of what do I do next creates this low-level hum of stress,
And that stress entirely distracts you from the actual purpose of being there
which is to say goodbye.
and to support the grieving family.
So the brochure acts as an anxiety reduction tool.
It really does. The source says it puts the outline directly in their hands. It answers all those anxious questions before you even have to ask them.
It tells you who is speaking next.
It tells you the sequence of events.
It tells you about the committal at the cemetery and the repast afterwards.
So it allows you to just relax.
The source used the term gentle guide.
I like that. A
Cool.
gentle guide. It respects the emotional weight of the day by just removing the burden of guessing.
It's hospitality, really, when you think about it. It's the family saying, we know this is hard for you too, so here is a map.
Precisely. Now, let's go back to that physical versus digital debate we touched on earlier.
Right.
Because the source was very clear that print feels permanent and shareable in a way that pixels just do not.
I really want to dig into the tactile aspect the source mentioned. Why is holding a physical piece of paper so important during a funeral service?
Well, think about the physiology of emotion. When you are overwhelmed, when you're on the verge of tears, or even when you're just feeling socially anxious, your hands actively look for something to do.
You need an anchor.
Yes, a physical anchor.
So it's almost like a fidget spinner for grief.
In a way, yes, exactly. The source analyzes this phenomenon. The paper offers something to physically hold on to. It grounds you in the room.
If you're crying, you can look down at the photo on the cover.
You can run your thumb over the crease in the paper.
And if you're holding a smartphone instead,
It changes the dynamic completely.
because a phone is a portal to the outside world.
Right. If I look down at my phone during a service, even if I'm just legitimately checking the digital order of service,
It looks like you're checking out.
it looks like I'm reading a text message or checking my work email.
It signals total disengagement.
It really does. But holding a brochure signals presence.
Yeah.
It keeps you firmly in the room.
And then there is the future scenario that the source paints. The stumble upon factor.
I love this part. The idea of finding the brochure years later.
We have all done it. You know, you're cleaning out a desk drawer or you open a book you haven't read in 10 years.
And out falls a funeral program.
And instantly you are right back there in that moment.
Instantly. The source notes that it triggers very specific memories.
A song that was played.
A verse that was read. Or just the general feeling of that day. It is a physical key that unlocks a memory.
Whereas a PDF file buried in some folder on your hard drive called Documents 2024 just doesn't have that serendipity.
You don't stumble across digital files the way you stumble across paper.
That is such a strong argument for the physical object. It's basically a time capsule that you can accidentally open.
Exactly.
So, we have established why we need them. We need them for order, for comfort, and for history. Now I want to get into the real nitty-gritty of what they actually are.
The anatomy of the brochure.
Yes. The source breaks this down into formats and sizes, and I was actually pretty surprised to learn there are really just 3 main archetypes.
It really helps to simplify it. Because when you are grieving, you don't want infinite choices.
No, you want standard options.
You want guardrails. And the source emphasizes that the choice of size isn't just about what looks pretty on the page.
What is it about?
It is entirely about content volume.
As in, how much do you actually have to say about this person?
Right. It's a practical decision first and an aesthetic decision second.
Okay, so let's run through the big 3. First up, we have what the source calls the standard bifold.
Also known as the classic.
This is like the Honda Civic of funeral programs, right?
That is a perfect way to describe it. Reliable, standard, gets the job done.
So what are the actual dimensions here?
It is a standard 8.5 by 11-inch sheet of paper.
Just a normal piece of printer paper.
Exactly. And it's folded in half exactly once.
So the finished product looks like a little greeting card?
Basically, yeah. The finished size is 5.5 by 8.5 inches. And the source notes this is the most common format by far.
Why is it so incredibly popular?
Well, because it fits the absolute essentials without being overwhelming for the family to create.
So what goes on it?
You have a cover with a nice photo. You have 2 inside panels for the order of service.
In the back.
You have a back panel for a short obituary or maybe a meaningful poem. It is compact.
The source mentions it is easy to hold.
It is. It fits right in a suit jacket pocket.
Or a small purse.
It doesn't feel intrusive or bulky.
But sometimes a life is too big for a greeting card.
That is a beautiful way to put it. Sometimes you simply need more real estate to tell the story.
And that is where the second option comes in. The large bifold.
Also called the tabloid or the full-page format.
Right.
This one is constructed from a much larger sheet of paper.
11 by 17 inches, right?
Yes. You fold that large sheet in half, and the finished brochure is the size of a standard piece of paper, 8.5 by 11.
So holding it feels more like holding a magazine or a workbook.
It is very substantial. The source actually calls it a mini memorial booklet.
So why would a family choose this over the classic?
You choose this when you really want to tell a deep story.
Got it.
If you want a long, detailed, multi-page obituary, or if you have a huge collage of 20 photos from different eras of their life.
You just need this size.
You do. It feels much more like a publication.
It also allows for larger text, doesn't it?
Yes, which is great for readability,
Mm.
and it gives the content room to breathe on the page without feeling crowded.
It feels very significant.
It does.
And then there's the third option the source outlined, the trifold,
The organized.
the organizer, right?
This one takes that standard letter-size sheet, but instead of folding it in half,
Fold it into thirds.
exactly, like a
Ah.
takeout menu from a restaurant or a corporate business brochure.
Now, the source specifically says this is particularly good for celebration of life events. Why is that?
It is all about structure. When you fold a piece of paper into thirds, you instantly create 6 distinct panels.
Front, back, and then the inside sections.
Right. This allows you to really compartmentalize the information.
How so? Give me an example.
Well, you can dedicate one single panel just to the bio.
Okay.
Another panel entirely for the order of service.
One panel for a poem.
Exactly. And maybe one panel for donation info or charity links.
So if you have a really complex event, maybe with a bunch of different speakers, a reception later, a charity component,
The trifold helps keep it all perfectly organized.
it separates the dry logistics from the emotional sentiment.
Exactly. It's a very tidy format.
Now, connecting all of these formats is this concept of the fold.
The fold.
The source makes a really big point that the fold itself is transformative.
It really is. The expert in the source material explains that the fold is what physically turns a basic handout into a brochure.
It creates a narrative flow.
Yeah.
Walk us through that flow. How does folding paper do that?
Well, think about the physical act of interacting with it. You start with the front cover,
That is the introduction.
right? It's the face of the person. It's the greeting.
Then you physically open it,
And that action reveals the inside panels.
which is the journey, the service itself, the life story,
Exactly. And finally, you close it to see the back panel,
the conclusion.
the wrap-up, the thank yous.
Mm.
The fold literally forces the reader to experience the content in a very specific, linear order.
It turns a flat piece of paper into a story.
It gives it a definitive beginning, middle, and end.
That is so interesting. Let's move on to the content itself now.
The design strategies.
Right. The source talks a lot about balancing information and emotion. So let's start with the cover, what the source calls the face of the tribute.
The cover is your absolute first impression. It sets the entire tone for the service.
Obviously, you have the standard stuff, the full name, the birth and death dates.
But the source is adamant that the most critical element on that page is the photo.
And not just any photo.
No. It needs to be high resolution, obviously. You don't want a blurry, pixelated image.
Right.
But more importantly, the source says it needs to feel like them.
What does that actually mean in practice for a family choosing a picture?
It means capturing their authentic self.
So, like, if your uncle was a fisherman who absolutely hated wearing suits,
Do not use the photo of him in a stiff, uncomfortable suit from a cousin's wedding in 1995.
use the photo of him out on the boat.
Exactly. Or if your grandmother was known for this loud, amazing laugh, don't use a serious, stoic portrait.
Use the candid shot where she's just beaming.
The cover should instantly capture the essence of who the person was every day.
The source also mentions the text elements on the cover, like choosing between phrases like in loving memory versus celebrating the life of.
Those are such small phrases, but they do so much work.
How so?
They immediately signal to the guest whether this is going to be a somber, traditional mourning event or an uplifting, joyous celebration.
It sets expectations before the brochure is even opened.
It frames the entire experience for the attendee.
Then we open it up, the inside panels. This is really the meat and potatoes of the document.
You have the order of service in there, which we've discussed, the list of events, who is reading what.
But you also have the obituary or the life sketch.
And the source draws a really sharp distinction here between a dry list of facts and a narrative story.
Okay, so a dry list would be...
Schools attended, jobs held, military service, list of survivors.
Right. Born in Akron, worked at the plant for 30 years, survived by his wife.
It is purely factual. It is genealogical.
But a narrative story.
A narrative story captures the personality. It's the color.
Like he loved spending Sundays in his garden.
She made the absolute best apple pie in the county.
He was a terrible driver, but a fiercely loyal friend.
Exactly. And the brilliant thing is, the brochure can handle either approach perfectly well.
It is a totally neutral vessel.
It completely adapts to whatever the family needs it to be. And that applies to the secular versus faith-based distinction, too.
Right. The source notes that the content inside shifts completely depending on the family's core beliefs.
A Catholic service, for example, might have the full liturgies, scripture readings, and traditional hymns printed out in full.
But a secular service might look totally different.
It might have poems by Mary Oliver.
Or lyrics to a favorite Beatles song.
Or, honestly, just a single paragraph of quiet reflection.
The physical structure of the brochure, the fold, the layout remains exactly the same.
But the soul of it changes to fit the person.
Let's talk about the back panel. The source calls this the utility player.
This is the logistical workhorse of the brochure.
So what goes here?
This is where you put the acknowledgments. The family publicly saying thank you to everyone for taking the time to come.
You list the pallbearers here, right?
Yes, which is an important honor to document. You put the donation instructions here, too.
Like, in lieu of flowers, please donate to this charity.
Exactly. And, crucially, the details for the reception or the repast.
It's the what do we do now section.
Right? It really is. It catches all the final details so people know exactly where to go when they leave the church or the funeral home.
There was one specific design rule in the text that I found really touching, actually. Yeah, it wasn't about aesthetics, really. It was about what the source called readability as an act of care.
This is such a profound point in the text.
It really is. The expert in the source emphasizes that readability isn't just some graphic design principle you learn in school.
It is an act of deep empathy.
Explain that for the listeners. Why is it empathy?
Look at who is actually in the audience at a funeral.
Right.
Many attendees are older. They might naturally have failing eyesight.
They might have left their reading glasses in the car in the rush to get inside.
Exactly. But even for the younger people sitting there, grief literally affects your vision.
Oh.
Crying makes your eyes puffy. It makes your vision blurry and strained.
That's so true. It's hard to physically focus your eyes when you're deeply emotional.
So if a designer chooses a tiny, swirling, elaborate script font, just because it looks fancy or elegant,
You are actually creating a barrier for your guests.
you are actively making it hard for people to participate in the service,
The source says, a brochure that feels calm on the page will feel calm in the hand.
which means using clean, simple fonts.
Strong contrast between the text and the background.
Big, generous margins so it doesn't look cluttered.
Exactly. Don't make the reader work for it.
They are already working hard enough just trying to keep it together emotionally.
So we know what it looks like. We know what goes in it. We know why it's designed the way it is.
Now we face the fork in the road.
The fork in the road. How do you actually make this thing?
The source compares the DIY approach versus the done-for-you approach.
And it is very fair to both methods.
It is. It doesn't say one is morally right and one is wrong.
It mostly depends on your emotional bandwidth at the time.
Let's start with the DIY route, what the source calls the act of love.
For some people, doing it themselves is a vital part of the grieving process.
The source describes this really enthusiastically. It gives the family a very real sense of agency.
Because when someone dies, you just feel so helpless.
You can't fix the ultimate problem.
Right. But you can fix the font size on the memorial program.
You can crop that photo perfectly to highlight their smile.
It's something to actively do with your hands and your mind when you're restless.
It is a genuine act of service. The source suggests that working on the brochure allows memories to become tangible.
You are sitting there at your computer, typing out their life story, staring at their face on the screen.
It can be an incredibly therapeutic process.
Plus, on a practical level, it's budget-friendly and it's fast.
If you are wide awake at 3 a.m. and the funeral's at 10 a.m. the next morning, DIY is literally your only option.
You have total, absolute creative control.
But there are risks involved.
Big risks. The source offers 2 major tips for anyone taking the DIY route.
Number 1, print a test copy.
Why is that so absolutely critical?
Because what looks amazing on a backlit screen doesn't always translate to paper.
You need to check the alignment.
You need to physically fold it and check the crease. You don't want the fold going right through the deceased face on the cover.
Or have the text getting cut off by the home printer's weird margins.
Exactly. And the second tip,
assign one person final authority.
to avoid the classic too many cooks in the kitchen situation.
Grief makes people incredibly sensitive. Tensions run high.
You do not want a massive family argument breaking out over whether to use the serif font or the sans serif font an hour before the memorial service.
Someone just has to be the designated editor-in-chief.
Make a decision and move on.
Then there is the other path, the done-for-you approach.
The source calls this one relief from burden.
This is for the families who are just suffering from intense decision fatigue.
Planning a funeral involves hundreds of tiny decisions in a very short window.
Choosing the casket, the flowers, the music.
Coordinating transport, arranging food, finding the right clothes to wear.
It is totally overwhelming.
So outsourcing the brochure to a professional is really just buying back a little bit of your sanity.
It is. You just hand over the raw data, the photos, the dates, the text.
And a professional handles the rest.
They handle the layout.
They handle the photo enhancement, removing red eye, fixing terrible lighting.
They handle the bleed and trim.
Bleed and trim. Those are very specific technical printing terms.
They are. And honestly, most people do not want to sit down and learn about bleed margins while they are actively mourning a spouse.
No, definitely not. You pay for the polish.
And you pay for the speed. Professionals can handle rush printing and overnight shipping without breaking a sweat.
Now, the source also mentioned a really interesting hybrid option.
This is a clever middle ground for families.
You buy a digital template online,
So you do the actual design work yourself on your computer.
keeping that creative control and the therapeutic act of love aspect we talked about.
But then, instead of printing it on your terrible inkjet printer, you send that file to a professional printing shop.
So you get the professional paper quality and crisp folding, but the deeply personal design.
Speaking of professional paper, that brings us right to paper and permanence.
The source has a very strong opinion here.
It really does. It highly recommends using a heavier stock paper.
Why does the actual physical weight of the paper matter so much?
It goes right back to that tactile experience we talked about at the beginning.
If you print the program on just standard copy paper,
Like the cheap 20-pound bond you use in your office printer.
it feels flimsy.
It feels disposable.
It feels like a flyer for a local pizza place that was stuck under your windshield wiper.
It crinkles way too easily in your hands.
It does. But if you spend a little more and use a heavier cardstock, it completely elevates the object.
It feels substantial in the hand.
It subconsciously tells the guest holding it, this is an important document. This is a keepsake.
And practically speaking, it just survives better over time.
Right. If you want this thing to last for 20 years tucked inside a Bible, it needs to be made of durable material.
And that leads us to the final section of our deep dive today, the afterlife of the brochure.
The afterlife.
The funeral ends, the guests all go home, but the brochure keeps working.
It has a whole second act.
One major function is inclusion.
The source talks about the tradition of mailing the brochure to relatives who simply couldn't attend the service.
That is a really lovely gesture.
It is. If you have an elderly aunt who is too ill to travel, or a cousin deployed overseas, mailing them the physical program makes them feel like they were part of the farewell.
It bridges that geographical distance.
Then there is the digital archive.
Which kind of brings our whole conversation full circle.
Families often scan the final printed physical brochure to keep a PDF file for future generations.
It literally becomes a permanent genealogical record.
So the physical paper actually becomes the source code for the digital archive.
And finally, there's coordination.
The brochure often acts as the anchor design for a whole suite of funeral stationery.
Matching prayer cards.
Bookmarks, guest books, thank you notes.
When all of these different pieces match, when they share the same fonts, the same colors, the same design motifs.
It creates a beautiful, cohesive aesthetic.
It makes the entire service feel deeply intentional.
It adds a final layer of dignity and care to the event.
So, as we wrap this deep dive up, what does this all mean for you listening? We've looked at the psychology, the sizes, the intricate design rules, the production methods.
I think the source summarizes it beautifully as an act of hospitality.
Hospitality.
That is the word that really sticks with me from all this research.
Yes. It welcomes the guests.
It guides them gently through a very difficult, confusing hour of their lives.
And it gives them something beautiful to take home.
Whether you do it yourself on a home printer in the middle of the night or hire a high-end designer, the ultimate goal is exactly the same.
Dignity, warmth, and care.
The brochure is, as the source so perfectly puts it, a container for remembrance.
It is a small vessel for a really big life.
It really changes how I will look at these things in the future.
Same here. Instead of just glancing at it for the schedule, I'll see all the deliberate choices behind it.
I'll see the care of the family.
And that actually raises a final provocative thought for our listeners to take with them today.
We live in an era of the scroll.
We do. We scroll past hundreds of photos on Instagram instantly.
We consume content and forget it in seconds.
But the funeral brochure remains one of the very few documents in our modern lives that we deliberately design, print, and intend to preserve forever.
It is the anti-scroll.
It really is. It is a firm stake in the ground against forgetting.
So the next time you are handed one of these brochures at a door, don't just look at it as a quick program.
Look at it as a carefully constructed biography.
It is someone's profound attempt to say, this person mattered. They existed.
And here is the proof, right in your hands.
A biography in a fold.
I absolutely love that. Well, that is it for this deep dive. To our listeners from the Funeral Channel Network, and of course to our regulars, thank you so much for exploring this with us.
We hope you learned something new about something old.
It was a real pleasure. Keep learning, keep diving deep, and we will see you all next time.